All right. So internally focused use cases. Evolving talent needs. 2 years ago, it was how many, or a year and a half ago, it was how many prompt engineers did I need to hire? We're seeing that change. I view this as the best thing for our financial services companies is to upskill all talent around data and analytics, introduce them to artificial intelligence. It's going to continue to drive what our in terms of our clients and our industries, what do they need to do? It's not just prompt engineers, it's really around data analytics and how do we use this technology to actually advance and get value. And then last one is from an observation, product as a service or as a service. So most of my financial institutions are using Salesforce, or they're using ServiceNow, or they have a hyperscaler, and everybody in the market is building something. And that something is something that our clients can actually leverage and use. So the question is, do I build or do I buy? And do I wait for my vendor to deliver it, or should I build it myself? And I'll say our view is, if you have unique data streams to you, and therefore that drives value to your client, I would put money and invest there. If it's things like ServiceNow, I want to do AI and Gen AI sitting on top of IT ticketing, I'd probably let my vendor to actually handle that. Salesforce is going full out there with Agentforce. They're doing a lot around CRM. I think it's going to be some great things. We're going to plug that in. I don't think Salesforce is going to be understanding how your pricing might work, and that's a place that I would actually say you should start to invest in how pricing unique to your company would actually be in. And so there's a little bit of this interplay between do you build and buy, but certainly AI as a product or a service is coming out there. Every quarter, Deloitte goes around and asks a couple thousand executives, what do you think? How is Gen AI doing? And from the last quarter, I guess it was over the summer, here's what the results were. 1, build towards transformation with enduring value. I'm going to highlight the value word for a minute. We're going to talk more about this. Much of AI started with, can I get efficiencies? And it was, can I invest $1 and get $10 back? And I'd contend that we're missing a lot of the value components that are in that. If you look at like a bank and you look at teller, you might be thinking about net promoter score. We might be thinking about how do we get better marketing uptake. So the value piece is really important as we start to build and look for how do we inject this capability into our business. 2, focus on fundamentals and adaptability. This thing continues to change. This technology changes, the frameworks change, the platforms change. You can't today build and expect it to run. You need to make sure that you continue to provide investment capabilities and evolve with the technology. But the fundamentals matter, and a lot of that comes down to data availability, or data platforms, and how can we line things up to actually have Gen AI pull it in. I use an example here. So I'm a banking person by trade, 20 years doing retail and commercial banks in client service. When we think about data in a bank, there's an incredible treasure trove of data sitting in PDFs stuck somewhere over here. And so people think about data and it's sitting in the core banking platform or the transaction platform. There's a lot of data that we can go find. But if we don't find it and actually bring it into the environment, it's not necessarily useful. So I think about the fundamentals, like there's a lot that we have to put in play before we can actually get Gen AI to start to work for us. Democratize responsibility and accountability. This is not a tech problem. This is a business problem. We need to make sure that people that actually accept and adopt some of the Gen AI capabilities take ownership of those components, because we can't just turn on the use case and then let it go. I've mentioned a lot about data. It's got to be an accelerator, not a barrier, and then measure performance more rigorously. We went in 2023, we turned on a lot of toys. They were proofs of concept, they look really cool, they got everybody excited. Didn't necessarily provide value. We need to continuously monitor, are we getting value out of these investments? Because if not, things get turned off. It's no surprise that ultimately in a for-profit institution, we need to make sure that we can provide value. So where we are in financial services today, now, near term, further down the road, now is literally now. Near term is, my view, 18 months out. Down the road is 3 years. Today, we have digital assistants and chatbots. We do customer contact sentiment analysis. It works, it's providing value. We have AI document processor. I mentioned the PDFs, we can go grab it we can suck things out, we can get to a structured data, we can make decisions. In the near term, I see us starting to use this for much better personalized recommendations. So it could be personalized products, so the great recommender. We're going to do a lot more with real-time pricing, and we're going to start to build out pricing models based upon this. And then further down the road in scaling, and this is where I think it gets more exciting, is once we're comfortable with the tech, once we're comfortable with the AI patterns, we've got them in place and we're using them, we're not going to take processes existing as they are and automate a piece. We're actually going to redesign the process so it works. And so I like commercial lending. I think about this as a commercial banker sitting, working the deal with their AI listening on their phone. And while the conversation is occurring, not only are we taking notes and all the basic things that happen today, we're going to start term sheet generation automatically done. We're going to already start onboarding those customers if they're not there. We're going to start pulling in financial information, things that we typically have a loan administrator do today. But that requires a process to actually change because the bank was built upon manual processes with people that are doing it. Same with much of our institutions, whether it's in insurance or asset management, et cetera. So we need to start to think if we're going to really scale and get true value, you have to refactor your processes. And so it's back to good old process redesign that we've all done for many years. So this is a little simplified, but really 3 steps from us to review to go from proof of concept to actual adoption and use cases. So 1, there's a level of excitement that's necessary. Like we need to get the organization excited about this. Now the good news is we've been on a hype curve with rocket engines in the back, so everybody knows about AI and Gen AI. I can't tell you the number of boards that I've gone to speak to about this, and they're excited about the concept around it. So there is knowledge. But I do think it's helpful to create some proofs of concept and put it in the place, put it in the language of your institution. The other thing is you need to start with an AI strategy. We can't just start by saying we're going to build some proofs of concept and not go from here. It's why are we building this? What are we hoping to get? Once we get some excitement, we get some investment, we got an AI strategy in place, we got use cases built, we're going to deploy version 1. And this thing should do something. Maybe the value is 5 to 10%, but it does something and we get it into production. The key pieces here are we need to get to an AI platform, we need an operating model that supports it, and we need to make sure that we're all evaluating value. Again, it's not $1 equates to $10 in ROI. It's what are the other measurements that we have in place, and we consistently measure that. Once we've gotten through that toll gate, we actually have something in process. We're seeing value. Now we can start to see that we transform the experience and we start driving at scale. Most of my clients today are in number 2. They're 1 or 2. Getting to number 3 is actually a challenge. And it's a challenge for a variety of reasons. I used to talk that 2023 was all about experimenting and POC. 2024 was supposed to be about production. I think 2025 is all about production. It's taken a bit to actually get this thing into production and continuously show value. But you'll see that process re-engineering down here. I think that's a really key part to making sure that we can actually drive scale and we build it into the institution. Approach to scale. I don't know if anyone started a POC and you opened up OpenAI, started building an agent off that, or we started to work with that from an enterprise. I view that we started from an LLM perspective when we really need to start with a platform perspective. So anybody that has a data warehouse today or a data platform, we're going to build that for AI. I think Google's platform is really strong, candidly. We've got data, compute, frameworks, models, and agents. It's all tied together. I think that's a really important part is we can't think about things like just the model or just the agents. It needs to stitch together. I'm a big believer that small language models will rule the world. I don't think every model fits every problem. And I don't think if you need to create term sheets with Gen AI, that I need to have this massive multi-billion type of thing. I just need something that understands my language and what's a term sheet. So I think your model garden is really an important part. And again, that gets back to how do we create this platform that we can shuttle lots of different use cases in and out. I go back to the part where I mentioned Salesforce or ServiceNow. We have a number of places. Oh, thank you so much. We have a number of places in which we're building AI on the back of Salesforce. We're having Salesforce punch out to our platform, get an answer, and bring it back. In some instances, we're using Salesforce's AI capabilities, but in many, we're using it off our own platform. I think you're going to do a lot of that. And I think that's going to be really helpful to make sure that you're thinking about this as a platform and building your platform at scale, because then you put your operating model around it, you put your controls around these pieces, you actually industrialize what happens within your company, and it's not just a couple of people sitting off on the side of your data scientists trying to manage this platform. But that comes with 4 pieces of engineering practices that you need to make sure you improve. So one is LLM ops. So I view LLM ops is 10 times more important than your ML ops. We may not control the model. We may not necessarily understand how these things are working. We need to take and you need to build a robust set of operations related to LLM so that we continue to monitor progress, accuracy, and it's consistent. It's not a one and done. Defensive UI. AI is often wrong, but never in doubt. We need to make sure your UI understands that. And so when a user is getting an answer back from an LLM, it's really helpful to understand confidence. It's helpful to understand maybe there's a couple of different options as in terms of what the response could be, citations. Our developers need to actually build defensive UI into this. It's not simply a one single punch out to the AI platform, get an answer and bring it back. That also helps candidly with change management and building support around the user base and whether this technology is working or not. Evals, I mentioned small language models versus large. Industry evaluations may not necessarily give you great answers for your data sets. So if you have a whole lot of loan data, there's not a lot of industry evaluations out there that work just for loan data sets. So consider your evaluations. You may have to consider to build something in evals within your own organization to test whether the LLM continues to work correctly or not. We ran into this in a couple of places where we put things into production. It's really refined our thinking that it's important. And then guardrails. What I find interesting about guardrails is that it's actually it's multiple types of roles together. We don't just need the engineers. We also need people that understand the business and know how do we put guardrails in place so that we don't recommend something that's out of policy, something that makes a mistake within the company. So these 4 pieces to really get AI scaled and to drive, our view is you have to begin to add these 4 engineering components and practices into when you're building. There's a lot of words on here. Risks that you have to contemplate. I don't think anybody in this room, these will come as a surprise, but one is cyber risk. So I'm sure everybody remembers the Hong Kong issue where there was 7 people as a deep fake and a couple tens of millions of dollars went out the bank because someone broke the policy. It's real. People are using Gen AI to be bad actors, and so we have to understand what that is. And that's a big risk that's coming in because of Gen AI. Data risk. If we're using someone else's model and we don't understand how our data is going to be consumed, that could be a problem. They could be using it for your training. So it's really important that we understand what is happening with data and our data that is going out of the organization. Third-party risk. We're potentially introducing a net new vendor into our organization. So all of our TPRM that we normally have to do, you have to consider this. If we build it into a enterprise solution and they go down, we have to make sure we can back it up. So we need to make sure the normal third-party risk is there, and we have to put it with the lens of Gen AI. Tech risk, we have the potential to build in new tech debt within here. So just understanding what are we building. It seems really cool and great today. In 10 years, that the new CIO may be really upset with you because we've got some cost associated with it. Model risk. Lack of explainability. So how we actually use the model in what part of the business process really matters from my perspective here, if it is black box or not. So I'll go back to banking because I love banking. I don't view today that we're going to make credit decisions using an LLM model. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think our decisioning models that we have today work pretty well. I do think it makes a lot of sense to do credit operations where we're bringing in all of the data associated in making the decision using LLM. So it's easier to explain to my risk group that I'm not making a decision with an LLM when I'm using it to grab data and structure it and get it up to the point of making a decision, and I already have my model risk management in place. So how we handle models, how we consider models, it's important to work with your MRM group to make sure that we've got understanding of our model risk. Reg risk, had a couple of partners that sat on the Hill, I think this was 6 months ago, talking with the regulators, and the regulators said, we're going to take 2024 to learn. And in 2025, we're going to start pushing out guidance. So I think we're going to start to see some more guidance related to this in the regulatory over the next year. At least that was what was indicated. So bringing it home, lessons learned that we have. What to avoid. Dabbling without a cohesive strategy. It's really fun to build proofs of concept. It absolutely builds excitement. It is a way to get organizations start to investing. But if we don't have a cohesive strategy, it can stop at proofs of concept and we can't start to get value out of it. Lifting and shifting of current processes. I don't know if anyone went through the robotics experience of 7 or 8 years ago. That was going to be the silver bullet. It was going to take away all our manual processes, and it didn't work. I did a number of those, in fact, lost a bunch of money on it, and that's why I bring it up. If you just simply move the process as is and try to automate, we find a lot of failures. So make sure you understand that you may have to re-engineer that process to actually get the value out of automation and using AI. Executing without an improvement plan. Version 1 is not going to be good enough. This thing continues to change. We will have tool change. We will have capability change. So it's really important to make sure that there is a investment envelope on the back end of this so that we can continue to improve and invest. Focusing on AI capabilities and not the business need. It is a tool. It is a great tool. I love AI. I think it's very cool. But it doesn't do the business process. We still ultimately need to deliver against that. And that's why I harp so much on the concept of value and making sure our business leaders understand what are they going to get out of this and we can track back to it. Otherwise, we shut this down pretty quickly. And then thinking AI contained only what you do in your house. I've mentioned Salesforce, I mentioned ServiceNow, et cetera. A lot of vendors are out there doing this already. In some instances, you don't actually need a lot of technology depth and breadth to be able to start to take advantage of it. So make sure your vision and your aperture is wide, because there's a lot of places that we can get some advantages here. So that's what we are seeing, and I'll just give you one last number. So Deloitte we've put a couple of hundred AI capabilities into production. We may have crossed into the thousands in the last month or not. Candidly, it's been slow, and it was slower than I expected to get our clients there. We had a lot of excitement in 2023. We had a lot of build in 2024. It's taken a fair amount, some of which is the data components are actually a big part of this and making sure it's lined up. So this story will end in this part. So insurance company, it was $14 million to do, I think it was 6 use cases. 12 million of that was getting the data ready and prepped to actually be used and consumed for AI. It was 2 million to do the AI. So from my view, to really get scale, data has to be the focus. Data gravity matters, and then we can start to build from there. And so find your data where you actually have good, clean, consistent data we can do something with AI with and a business need, and that's where we're seeing the ability to really start to drive scale. And I think that's it. So thank you all for coming. I'll be around for a few minutes if you want to chat.